So what does Donald Trump propose? A lasting peace or a capitulation to Ukraine? Is this an ultimatum and deadline for Ukraine, or just another bluff to solve Donald Trump's own domestic problems? This and other topics we will discuss right now. My name is Irina Uzlova, and today with us is Yuri Rashkin, TV host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report in English, Rashkin News. Yuri, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
A lot of thoughts, a lot of opinions around that new peace deal by Witkoff and Dmitriev, by Donald Trump, 28 steps of this peace negotiation plan, but a lot of questions without answering even. Donald Trump confirms deadline for Ukraine's peace plan. Ukraine must sign the 28th point U.S. peace plan to end the war by next Thursday, November 27. U.S. President Donald Trump stated this in radio interview with Fox News, citing, "I've had a lot of deadlines, but if things are working well, you tend to extend the deadlines. But Thursday is it," he said. But we say that a lot of unrealistic problems with our territories, with security guarantees, with different steps by Russian Federation. So, Yuri, what can we say about this deadline? Do you believe in it? Because we saw a lot of deadlines by Trump. We have seen tens, dozens of it, but not realistic solving. And about this plan, first in general, what are your feelings and expressions of it?
Well, my impression of it was that this is a plan for Ukraine's capitulation. And when I did a stream on my channel about this earlier today in Russian, I got very strong responses from my viewers, and I just wanted to share with your viewers this comment, which I think is really indicative of what's Ukraine is going through right now, because of Trump's demand for capitulation, and at the same time, what Ukraine is going through. So the person writes, "We are ready. We are with our president. Now has come a moment when we shall either break or will become one people, united people. All who wanted left. Those who stayed recognize that any day can be their last, and we are staying. Of course, many will still leave, but we shall stay in our house, in our home, in our country. Shame to Trump, shame to America if it will let Putin consume us, and shame to collaborationists who betrayed and betray Ukrainian people in hopes that Putin will value their efforts. Slava Ukraini, Geroyam Slava, we're with our president." So to me, that sends a very clear message that administration has miscalculated, because they thought that Zelensky was going to be weakened right now by this scandal, that the winter and almost 4 years of war is going to put enough pressure on Ukraine at this point to surrender to Russian demands, according to a plan hatched by, it's like a Miami Kremlin plan for peace, because it was hatched in Miami between a Russian oligarch, practically family member of Putin, and Steve Witkoff, who is practically, a close friend of Donald Trump's. Which one of them is friend of Ukraine exactly? Neither one. But the goal here, it appears, that Donald Trump wants to exit this in any involvement with Ukraine and blame Ukraine for it, because to expect Ukraine realistically to sign this and to put him in, in his perhaps a sick imagination, he thinks that since Nobel Peace Prize deadline is January 1st, he needs to get everything done now. But no matter what, Ukraine is not going to surrender. And so this is a big miscalculation by the administration that I feel is acting out of desperation. That is also, I feel, is kind of like more desperate because they lost American people. They lost the House of Representatives. They lost the Senate on the Epstein issue. And MAGA is falling apart between the fact that Trump is flying all over the world making rare earth deals to to the fact that he invited 600,000 Chinese students to come into the United States, which is a boon for universities, but terrible for MAGA, and just the Epstein files, which have all caused Marjorie Taylor Greene and other MAGA to begin to splinter from the president. So in his difficult situation, he's doing, in a sense, what any lame duck American president does, which is go to other countries and try to be a peacemaker elsewhere. And he can claim credit for anything he wants, which he does. Well, victories. He doesn't claim credit for defeat. That's always somebody else's. But in this situation, when he basically is, just yelling at people on Truth Social, it looks scary and almost meaningless at the same time, especially when we know, like you said, how many deadlines there have been that this administration ignored, that this administration postponed, even to, we're supposed to have sanctions from for Lukoil and Rosneft kicking in. Where are they? They're not coming in. And that's another, by the way, purpose for this proposed agreement, because now the conversation is shifting from whether Europe should give Ukraine $140 billion or not, or what's going on there, and all of those things, whether Lukoil sanctions should be taking place now or should they wait because there's a peace process all of a sudden. But again, it's very important for people in the United States to provide pressure on this administration because Ukraine is going to resist, and Europe looks like it's going to support Ukraine also, because now we see information that Trump is looking to get his hands on $140 billion, which Europe wants to use to pay for war for Ukraine. But Trump actually wants to, as part of his 28-point plan, which solves his problems and doesn't take into consideration, well, his and Russian problems, but doesn't take into consideration either Ukraine or Europe. Now we have the question about $140 billion. Who's going to get it? Is Europe going to get it, or is Trump going to get it? So that means that A, there is room for negotiations. B, that means that things may change yet. And C, I go back to the fact that Secretary of the Army Dan Driscoll is the one who is presenting this proposal, and I find it very interesting that it's not Secretary of Defense War Hegseth, who is busy writing on Truth Social or X or wherever he is, promoting whatever values of military fitness that he is been focused on, because serious stuff is now being done by Dan Driscoll, who is showing himself to be a rising star in Pentagon, according to Politico, but perhaps is also being set up to fail. And he's also lowering expectations himself of what is going to be accomplished. It's almost like, hey, I'm just here to see how things are going, to share some points, to get some points back. In part because Secretary Driscoll understands that he doesn't make these decisions. Trump makes those decisions. But this administration is struggling to even find enough qualified people to just present their point of view. This is why you have somebody like Marco Rubio, who ends up getting more than one position, and he's not alone. And it sounds like Secretary of the Army, who is also Secretary of Drug Administration, Firearms, Tobacco, Drug Administration, is also combining other things, because with the first Trump administration, there was Jared Kushner, who was responsible for solving all the problems that Trump needed solutions for. Now he's got a handful of people, and it seems like Dan Driscoll is one of those people. But he's playing, a part of a good cop because he's willing to negotiate, versus Witkoff, who's like a bad cop who's not willing to negotiate, and he's just presenting point of view of Trump. Well, that's maybe why Keith Kellogg is leaving the place, because what is he doing there? Nothing. And I think that Dan Driscoll ultimately is showing that nothing is for certain. Nothing is guaranteed with this president, more so than with any other person.
But what we see, if Ukraine refuses, what will happen next? What actions can be expected from Trump? If it's bluff, I think that nothing will change.
Well, if that's pretty much the definition of bluff, isn't it? That nothing changes, because it turned out that those cards that they said they had, they didn't really have, and it turns out that it was a bluff. And I think the big question is, what is Trump going to do about intelligence? We know that American intelligence really does play a crucial role. And while Zelensky can do something like pretty aggressive, take an aggressive step and say, you know what, we're going to spend $50 billion on Patriots, not in the United States, but we're instead going to get everything from Europe. That is one possibility of how Ukraine can provide pressure on this administration, because this administration counts money. But sharing intelligence was crucial for Ukraine when it lost Kursk. And it is also crucial for Ukraine now that it is striking far off oil refineries all over Russia. So I think it's probably part of the pressure from Kremlin, frankly, because they know how crucial it would be for them if Ukraine didn't get access to this intelligence. And this is not a question of money either, because the intelligence is already there. It's already being gathered. It's just a matter of sharing it. But Trump, again and again, is trying to put Ukraine in a bad position here. So now it's going to be a question for Ukrainian diplomacy to show that they're really willing to agree to any serious peace deal. But when we have Putin on the other side, I mean, it feels like it's something that almost like there has to be a template for every time Trump proposes this. But it's always a check. It's always a check to see if Ukraine's allies are still Ukraine's allies, if those that are going to provide pressure on him are going to provide pressure again and again and again. This president is very insistent about his expressing his desires. If he decided to grab somebody by something, he's going to do it.
But at the same time, Donald Trump stated today that he has no intention of lifting sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil. He emphasized that sanctions against Russian oil companies will take effect very soon. And today we see the day that they get start in their realization. Really, after 1 month, Trump announced these sanctions 1 month ago.
Are you saying that they're actually taking effect on 21st of November as advertised? Because
yes,
I thought that very soon means
no,
not
very
yet.
soon. It's a fact very soon. But today we see that these sanctions, as Trump told 1 month ago, they have begun to take effect because they are starting by this day, 21st November. In full
Well, let's
scale.
see what happens. We've heard, we've heard other things. We've heard other dates. We've heard about these sanctions being postponed. And we know that one of the first things that this administration did is fire all the people that were there to make sure that sanctions from Biden, but from Biden were followed. Maybe this is a proof of theory that there is a difference between Biden sanctions and Trump sanctions. And then Trump doesn't follow Biden sanctions, but he follows Trump sanctions. But still, I think that if anything, I can see this as an opportunity for somebody connected to Trump to perhaps get their hands on another business and make costs higher for Russia to stay in the war. But this is solution using Trump's methods. We don't know what really is happening. All we know is that this is being justified by things that he thinks we'd like to hear. Oh, this is for Ukraine. Oh, this is to stop Russia. What in reality is happening, we'll find out from some press reporter, hopefully very soon. But I think that when it comes to sanctions, all right, let's give it a day or 2 or 3 and see how long it's going to happen. Because at this point, 7 days that Trump is giving, or 6 days, whatever, because it's really just less than a week that he's giving Ukraine to surrender, is even a shorter period of time than it's going to take to see if sanctions are going to work or not, isn't it? Because you need time for that. And of course, the threat of Trump's sanctions has already had an effect. And we see that India is looking at buying, or is buying less Russian oil. And the situation is difficult for Russia. And I think that's why it's so important for Ukraine to stand its ground. But I mean, of course, this is decision of people of Ukraine. All we can do in the United States is support Ukraine and support Ukraine, whatever decision Ukrainians make. But it seems to me that this president is pushing to see how far he can get, just because he would like to get this over with. He wishes this war was over in 24 hours, because if he was president of Ukraine, he would have surrendered by now. I mean, let's be reasonable. Russia is so much bigger. He would have probably gotten a Nobel Prize by now if he, who knows?
But we see now that Indian companies, the China companies, they finish their co-working with the Russian Federation and almost all deals with the Russian oil company and with Russian gas oil.
It's true. And so now we're seeing if this policy will have the desired effect, because the desired effect is to have Putin stop the war, because that's how Trump is providing pressure on Putin, supposedly. And how's that going? Is Russia ready to negotiate on those 28 points? Or is Russia just saying, like Kirillov said, that we are glad that our point of view is being heard better now in Washington? That doesn't sound like somebody who is negotiating. So it seems to me that Russia is at least acting like they always act with new sanctions, which is we don't give a damn. And I don't see any reason. If Trump wasn't president now, he'd be making fun of these sanctions. He would have said, if I was president, I would have had some serious sanctions that would have put Putin at the negotiation table in 24 hours. And there would have been a sizable number of people that would have believed him, because it sounds so good, because we want the war to end. But I think Ukraine can just is not able to surrender, because too much has been invested. And unlike Trump, Ukrainians are thinking about consequences. They are aware that if they're going to agree to this peace deal with Russia, that means shrinking armed forces, making itself basically defenseless and setting itself up for another invasion by Putin down the road. It could be days, weeks, months, but it's inevitable. But Trump doesn't think about that. There's killings continue in Gaza every day, and Israel continues to bomb, but we see that this is peace, according to Trump, which means, are we ever going to even really see true peace, even if it's just a fake peace? Or is it going to be the same thing that Ukraine has observed between 2014 and 22, when the war was very much going on for 8 years in eastern Ukraine, because Russia was continually feeding the putting forces there in conducting war, while at the same time there is a distinction between what was happening first 8 years and then happened starting in 2022. We still see that Russia is always at war. It's a nation at war. As long as there's going to be Putin, it's going to be a nation at war. Then there's probably going to be a break for a little while before the next vampire takes over.
But one more detailizing question. Does Trump really believe that such way of ending Russian-Ukrainian war can save him from his internal political problems and Epstein files, really scandal?
I don't know to what extent at the moment this is connected to the Epstein files, because with Epstein files, he has effectively postponed them for at least 30 days. He solved that problem, and it's almost like having solved that problem for 2 eternities. As I think to him, 2 weeks is an eternity, so a month is like eternity times 2. He's now focused on other things. At the same time, he's also has, it sounds like, a plan A and plan B for what to do at the end of 30 days when no documents will be produced, which is either A, produce them but severely redacted, like nothing except for like Bill Clinton, and then like nothing again, blacked out. And also to claim the fact that there's a active investigation going on, and therefore it's not possible to release any of the documents. So I think that even though that might not work, and there could be other things that will occur, even the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene can choose to go to the House of Representatives floor and read the names because she's threatened to do that, and I don't think that threat has been withdrawn. So there's a sizable number of people that are waiting for this case to be advanced further. It seems like this part of his agenda has more to do with fulfilling whatever obligations he may have with Kremlin, frankly, because Even though there's polling that shows, I guess, that 90% of MAGA think that it is Trump's responsibility to end this war, I don't believe that MAGA voters consider Ukraine to be a priority for them, among other things. I think they generally probably put Ukraine on a pile of we don't want to finance things that are happening outside of our country pile, which is a pretty big pile if you think about it. But I think that's the extent of their interest. But for Trump, the fact that Nobel Peace Prize is happening could be a very strong motivator to do it now because the deadline there, I guess, is January 1st to submit the nominations for this year. And so he would like to end the war, or at least he's being explained that that would be a good reason for him to end the war. And my impression, just looking at all the information coming out of Russia about how terrible the economic situation is over there, how Putin is looking at a potential of mobilization next year, and how it will be politically difficult, it seems to me that Russia is really under some pressure to end the war and would like the war to end, of course, on its terms, but they would like to declare victory as soon as possible. And so for Trump, I think the Epstein case is a little bit on a back burner momentarily for a few days, which is a long time for him because he could put troops in, in another American city by then, or several. Versus accomplishing this goal with Ukraine, which he does feel pressured for a variety of reasons to conclude, but at the same time only on his terms. And he just thinks that Zelensky is so weakened right now by scandal, that Ukraine is weakened by 4 years of war, that he thinks that Russia is doing strong militarily right now, and things are going well for Russia, and all sorts of disinformation and misinformation that he may have consumed that led him to be where he is now. So it's now part of the important role for all of us, from United States citizens to Ukrainian citizens, to explain exactly how wrong this plan is and how it doesn't bring about peace. I, specifically appreciate Timothy Snyder's point of view, who thinks that this will just bring the world closer to nuclear war, because in this situation, every country will just realize that they better have nuclear weapons, which is, again, rings back to the Budapest Memorandum, doesn't it? And the fact that Ukraine has such a sad history of relying on guarantees of safety from other countries, specifically the United States.
Is Putin counting that Trump can save him and his cruel political war?
There's a possibility that Trump can be in trouble with Putin, because Putin can see when we discuss the compromise and those kinds of things, we run into a problem with our president, which is he seems to have no shame. And therefore, how much can he be embarrassed? And I think that is a weakness of compromise, and I think this is why Putin does a much better job of luring Trump in with ideas of huge business projects and lots of money and riches. But Putin clearly has a lot of information. Epstein clearly contacted Kremlin. Epstein had close relationship with Churkin, who was a longtime representative of Russia in the United Nations. So I think that connections there are begging to be discovered. They're practically, at our fingertips. And yet we see so many people continue to support Trump. It baffles the mind. And yet it also explains why MAGA is cracking, and why you see people who, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and others, the entire Republican caucus, except for Clay Higgins, voted to release Epstein files. And I think Trump is finding himself really isolated here. And in this situation, Putin can be not just ally, but he can be an escape raft in case Trump needs to get the heck out of Dodge, because things are looking really tough for him, with the realization that we in the United States are kind of lacking levers to remedy the situation. Truly, we can't catapult our president out of office. We are looking at either impeachment, which is going to be down the road ways and might never happen, or we're looking at the 25th Amendment, which requires cabinet switch basically president for vice president. And with this cabinet that we have now, the secretaries from Hegseth to Noam to Kennedy and on, could be looking at dealing with a lot of potential legal trouble. So if Trump is not there to tell them that everything they're doing is okay. So I think that they have real incentive to keep president in there, no matter how irrational he acts, because it allows them to pursue their agenda and frankly fill their pockets. So the president seems to be kind of a long-term problem unless he just entirely blows his stack the next time somebody again asks him about the Epstein case, and he's going to start yelling about how he doesn't like the tone and he's going to take the license away from ABC, and it creates a great viral video. It really feels to me like going forward, journalists should first ask him about the Epstein case, not because it's relevant and it's a number one story possibly in the world, but because his reaction is such a good warm-up that after that, any other question, I think will have a more interesting answer.
Yuri, thank you very much for all your answers, for your position and your time. See you next week and on our another YouTube channels in different languages. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report in English and Rashkin News, was with us and with me, Irina Uzlova. Thank you for joining and watching us. Please subscribe to our YouTube channels and take care. See you.